All he wanted was a cup of sugar. But what he found was someone he'd been missing his whole life. I was just settling into a quiet evening. The kind where the world feels gentler. Warm lamp light filling the living room. Soft rain tapping at the windows like a lullaby. I'd spent most of the day studying and scrolling through my phone. Half bored, half restless. Nothing about that night felt special. Until the knock. It wasn't loud, just 3 polite taps. The kind that asks permission instead of demanding attention. I opened the door expecting a delivery or maybe a lost kid from down the street. But instead, there she was. Mrs. Alden. My neighbor. She stood framed by the soft glow of her porch light, wearing a light sweater that hugged her shape and jeans that carried a quiet kind of confidence. Her hair was slightly tousled, like she'd been reading on the couch and only just realized she'd run out of whatever she needed. There was a calm warmth to her presence, poised, yet approachable. Even though we'd exchanged friendly hellos before, I had never really looked at her until that moment. She smiled, gentle, a little hesitant. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you at this hour." Her voice had this soft, smoky tone, the kind that makes simple words feel like a secret. "It's no bother," I said, maybe too quickly. "Everything okay?" She shifted the empty container in her hands, almost embarrassed. "I was baking, and I didn't realize I was out of sugar. I know it's silly, but could I borrow some?" That was it. Sugar. Something so small. But the way my heart kicked in my chest made me wonder if I'd suddenly become allergic to being this close to someone so beautiful. Not flashy or trying, just effortlessly elegant, grounded in a maturity that drew me in. "Oh yeah, of course. Come in for a second. It's wet out here," I offered. She stepped inside, smelling faintly of vanilla and rain. I grabbed the sugar, trying to act casual, though my hands felt strangely aware of themselves. When I returned, she reached for the container at the exact moment I handed it to her, our fingers brushing. Tiny moment, tiny spark, but it changed something. She must have felt it too because she paused, her eyes meeting mine, just long enough to silence everything else. "Thank you," she said softly. "You saved my night." I laughed lightly, trying to downplay how my pulse was racing. "It's just sugar." "Yes," she replied, tilting her head with this playful glimmer in her eyes. "But you delivered it with a hero's charm." My face warmed. I hoped the lighting hit it well. She stepped back toward the door, giving me that same grateful smile. But before leaving, she said something quiet, thoughtful, like she only dared to let the words escape at the very last second. "I'm glad you were the one who answered." Then she slipped into the rain-dusted night, leaving the scent of vanilla in the air, and a strange new energy in my chest. I closed the door slowly, leaning against it, breathing in. It was just sugar, just a neighbor, right? The next afternoon, I wasn't expecting anyone. I was halfway through reheating leftover pasta when another knock came. Lighter this time, almost shy. A part of me already knew who it might be. Still, when I opened the door and saw her there, my chest did a strange twist. She stood with a small plate in her hands, warm muffins wrapped in a cloth, steam rising like an invitation. "I brought these as a thank you," she said, a little breathless. "I figured you shouldn't lend sugar without getting something sweet in return." I smiled, stepping aside before my brain even agreed. "You didn't have to." "I know," she replied, slipping inside. "But I wanted to." Her voice had that same soft warmth, like she was letting me into her world, 1 inch at a time. We set the muffins on the counter, and when I reached for plates, she stood close, closer than neighbors usually do. I could feel the faint heat from her body, smell the crisp vanilla and cinnamon from her baking. My pulse picked up again. We moved to the couch with 2 steaming mugs of coffee, the plate between us. She curled one leg beneath her, relaxed, like she'd been here 100 times instead of twice. "So," I asked, breaking a muffin, "what were you baking last night?" She laughed, a musical sound that made the room feel lighter. "Just a simple cake. Baking keeps me sane. When the house is quiet, it reminds me I'm still here." Her fingers toyed with the rim of her mug, shoulders softening. There was something in her eyes, a loneliness she wasn't hiding well. She told me she'd been living alone for almost 2 years. Life hadn't gone the way she once imagined. People she trusted drifted away. Work filled the silence, but never replaced connection. "It's strange," she said, gaze drifting to the rain still streaking my window. "You can be surrounded by houses and still feel like nobody really sees you." I swallowed hard, because I understood more than I expected. "I see you," I said, the words leaving before caution could stop them. She turned to me, surprised, then touched. A faint blush rose on her cheeks, delicate, unguarded. She nudged my arm lightly, teasing just enough to soften the moment. "You're kind, but you're too young to be saying things like that." I could have laughed it off, but instead, I held her gaze. "Maybe I'm exactly old enough." Something shifted, quietly, naturally, the kind of change you don't notice until you feel it. Our knees brushed beneath the coffee table. Neither of us moved away. Her eyes lingered on mine a little longer each time she glanced up. Every laugh brought her slightly closer, hand resting near mine, fingers almost touching. Minutes turned into an hour. The muffins disappeared, but neither of us seemed ready to end the conversation. Eventually, she stood, smoothing her sweater with slow hands. "Thank you for the company," she said, voice soft as candlelight. "It's been a while since someone made me feel welcome like this." I walked her to the door. She looked back once more, just long enough to leave me wondering if she felt the same quiet electricity I did. And when the door clicked shut, the silence she left behind wasn't empty. It was filled with anticipation. It was 3 nights later when I saw her again, though I'd been glancing at my front window more often than usual, wondering if I'd catch a glimpse of her walking to her car or tending to her garden. Nothing. Silence. And too much time to think. So when I stepped outside to take out the trash and noticed her car door open, groceries scattered in the back seat, and her standing there rubbing her shoulder like she'd strained something, I didn't hesitate. "Hey, let me help," I said, hurrying over before she could protest. She blinked in surprise. Then relief softened her expression. "I only meant to grab a few things," she said with a sheepish smile. Turns out a few turned into way too many. Without a second thought, I reached for the heaviest bags. She tried to protest again, but the weight spoke for itself. "Please," I said. "I insist." She laughed under her breath. "You're determined, aren't you?" "Only when it's the right thing to do." Her house felt different when I stepped inside. Warmer, quieter, filled with soft lighting and a faint scent of vanilla candles. Felt like her. Comfortable, peaceful. I carried the groceries into the kitchen and set them gently on the counter. When I turned around, she was locking the door, rain droplets glistening in her hair from the short walk inside. She brushed her fingers through it impatiently, and I don't know what compelled me. Maybe gratitude for her company the other night, maybe the silent pull growing stronger between us. But I grabbed the dish towel from the handle of the oven and stepped closer. "Here," I murmured, raising the towel. She froze, surprised by the gesture. But she didn't move away. I wiped a raindrop from her forehead, one from her cheek. Then my hand moved to her hair, slowly, carefully. Her eyes lifted to mine, wide, searching. Neither of us spoke. Her breathing changed, slightly unsteady, like her body knew something she was still afraid to name. My fingers hesitated in her curls, but she didn't pull back. Not even a fraction. The silence was close, intimate in a way that didn't need explanation. I could feel her warmth, the gentle rise and fall of her breath, the curve of a smile trying to form but too nervous to fully appear. Just as I felt us leaning, just a little into that invisible line between caution and desire, she stepped back. A step so small, yet it felt like a gulf. Her gaze lowered to the floor as she cleared her throat, softer this time. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That was sweet of you." Something behind her eyes flickered, conflict, maybe, longing wrapped in fear. I nodded, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my heartbeat. "Anytime." She opened the fridge to put away the milk, giving herself something to do, distance to rebuild. And I let her. Not because I wanted to step away, but because I understood. Some walls don't fall in a single moment. Sometimes they crumble piece by piece. When I left her house that night, the air felt different around us. Charged, uncertain, hopeful. And as the door closed behind me, I knew something for sure. She may have stepped back, but we were already closer than we'd ever been before. The next few days felt strangely heavy. Not because anything bad happened, but because nothing did. I didn't see her, not even once. Her blinds stayed closed, her car barely moved, and the warm glow from her living room never spilled into the night like before. It was as if the small moments we'd shared, the muffins, the laughter, the spark in the kitchen, had startled her into retreat. And I missed her, more than I should have. One late afternoon, I spotted her checking the mailbox. I told myself to stay upstairs, to let her have space. But the longing to see her up close again overpowered caution. I stepped outside with a forced casualness. "Hey!" I called softly. She startled, like she hadn't expected to hear my voice ever again. Then she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and tried to summon a kind smile. "Oh, hi. Sorry, I've just been busy." Her tone was polite, a little too polite. I stood there, pretending I couldn't feel the shift. "Everything okay?" She nodded. "Yes, I just think maybe we should give each other a little space." The words were gentle, careful, and sharper than she meant them to be. "Oh," I said, my throat tighter than expected. "If I made you uncomfortable that night, I'm really sorry." Her eyes widened, fear flashing across her expression, but not the kind directed at me. If anything, it was aimed inward. "No," she said quickly. "You didn't do anything wrong. You were kind. You always are." She looked down, fingers twisting her mail nervously. When she spoke again, her voice trembled, softer, more honest. "You make me feel younger, like I can breathe again." And I stopped letting myself feel that way a long time ago. My chest tightened with empathy, not victory. "And that scares you," I said, finishing what she couldn't. She met my eyes. Vulnerability shimmered there, deep and real. "I shouldn't want this," she whispered. "You have your whole future ahead of you, and I've already lived through mistakes I don't want to repeat." Instinctively, I stepped closer, but slowly, so she could stop me if she needed to. She didn't. I reached for her hand, a gentle, careful touch. Her fingers tensed for a heartbeat, then relaxed, fitting into mine like they'd been waiting for that connection. "You don't have to decide anything right now," I said quietly. "I'm not asking for forever. I'm just asking you not to shut me out." Tears pooled in her eyes. Not overwhelming, just enough to reveal how deeply she'd been holding herself back. "I think about you," I confessed. "Probably more than I should. But I won't rush you. I just want to be here. If you'll let me." She exhaled, a shaky, relieved sigh, and her thumb brushed lightly against my hand. A tiny gesture, a huge answer. Then she whispered the first hint of acceptance. "Okay, let's just take things slowly." The sun was dipping low, bathing her in gold. And in that moment, it felt like boundaries weren't walls anymore, just lines waiting to be crossed with trust. The storm rolled in before sunset, thick clouds churning like restless thoughts. Wind rattled the trees, rain streaked the windows, and the entire neighborhood seemed to shrink into silence. I was in my apartment, scrolling through news updates about the weather when the lights flickered, then vanished. Complete darkness swallowed the room, a beat of stillness. Then the uneasy realization. She was alone next door. Before my mind could second-guess, my hand was already grabbing my jacket and a flashlight. Her front porch light was dark too. I knocked. No answer. My heart hammered once, twice, and I tried again. The lock clicked. She opened the door, candlelight glowing behind her. Shadows danced softly along her face, highlighting the worry she tried to hide. "I hoped that was you," she breathed, relief washing through her voice like warm tea on a cold night. "I wanted to make sure you're okay," I said, lowering the flashlight. She stepped back, inviting me inside. The room was lit with candles placed carefully on shelves and tables, golden circles of warmth against the storm outside. "It's silly," she admitted, smiling tensely. "I'm not afraid of the dark, just the silence that comes with it." "You don't have to sit in it alone," I said. We settled on her couch, a single thick blanket draped across us for warmth. The storm roared outside, but in here, everything felt slower, quieter, intimate. Her shoulder pressed lightly against mine. Even that small contact sent awareness through me, measured, patient, powerful. She tucked her legs under the blanket, and when her knee brushed my thigh, she didn't move it away. We talked, softly, like the storm might hear us if we got too loud. She asked about my life, why I'd moved here, what I hoped for, what scared me. No one had asked me those things in a long while. Her gaze in the candlelight was steady, curious, and warmer than the flame itself. She listened like every detail mattered, like I mattered. When thunder shook the walls, she instinctively moved closer, her shoulder fitting perfectly beneath my arm. I let my hand rest behind her, not gripping, just being there. She didn't shy away. In fact, she leaned into me, her head easing against my shoulder like it belonged there. Her perfume was soft, something floral and quiet. It made it hard to think of anything except how near she was, how right it felt. The moment stretched, gentle, safe, like time was giving us permission. She tilted her face up slightly, eyes flicking to my mouth then away, flustered by her own impulse. I could feel her breath, warm and slow, brushing my jaw. It would have been so easy to close that small distance. Instead, her fingers curled slightly into my sleeve, and she whispered, "We shouldn't rush this." Her voice wasn't pulling away, it was guiding us, carefully. I nodded, touching my forehead to hers, the quietest promise in the world. "I'm not going anywhere," I whispered back. Outside, the storm kept raging. Inside, something softer and much more powerful was unfolding in the dark. I didn't plan to fall asleep there. Neither did she. But sometime after the storm softened, after our conversation faded into the comfort of quiet breathing, sleep simply wrapped itself around us. I woke first. The candles had melted low. Soft morning light filtered through the curtains, turning the living room into a calm, gentle space. And there she was, resting peacefully beside me. Her head was still on my shoulder. One hand lightly covered mine, like her heart had made a decision before her mind could catch up. Our legs were tangled beneath the blanket, close but not trapped, natural in a way only trust could allow. For a moment I didn't move. I just watched her breathe, slow, steady, safe. She looked younger like this, not in age but in freedom. The weight she usually carried in her eyes was missing, replaced by a softness I hadn't seen before. Her fingers shifted slightly, and she stirred, her eyelashes fluttering as she lifted her head. When she realized where she'd been sleeping, her cheeks warmed with embarrassment. "Oh God, I didn't mean to," she began, pulling her hand back too quickly. I caught it gently before she could retreat completely. "It's okay," I said softly. "I liked being here with you." Her eyes held mine, searching for any hint of insincerity. When she didn't find one, her shoulders eased, and she let out a small breath, the kind that carries relief. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, trying to compose herself. "I'm not usually this comfortable with someone," she admitted. "Maybe that's a sign," I said. "Not a problem." Her lips curved into a fragile, grateful smile. We made breakfast together, clumsy, sleepy, smiling more than talking. She brewed fresh coffee while I scrambled eggs that came out a little too soft, but she ate them anyway with an exaggerated yum that made me laugh. Eventually, we ended up sitting across from each other at her kitchen table, sunlight pooling between us. She toyed with her coffee cup, gathering courage. "I keep telling myself to be careful," she said, "to think about what people would say, how different our lives are." I nodded, letting her speak at her own pace. "But then you're here," she continued, voice warming, "and everything feels lighter, easier. Like maybe I deserve something good again. Her honesty hit me deep. I leaned closer, placing my hand over hers, slow enough for her to pull away if fear returned. She didn't. "I'm not asking you to ignore your fears," I said. "Just don't let them make the choices for you." Her eyes glistened, not with sadness, but with hope finding a second chance. "I want to see where this goes," she whispered. "If you do." My chest tightened in the best way. "I do," I replied. "More than you know." She let her fingers turn beneath mine, interlacing them. The simple act felt like a door opening, a truth accepted. She smiled then, truly smiled, and the room felt brighter for it. Her thumb brushed my hand, slow, affectionate, like she was memorizing the moment. "I'm glad you knocked," she said, and for the first time, neither of us tried to hide the reason why. The power eventually came back on with a quiet click, almost like it was apologizing for interrupting our night. And yet, neither of us moved from the kitchen table. We sat there, fingers gently interlaced, as though the world had stopped just long enough for us to finally catch our breath. Time felt different now. The storm had passed outside and, in a way, between us too. She looked down at our joined hands, as if seeing proof of something she'd been too afraid to believe. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft but steady. "I'm scared," she said, not as a confession but as honesty. "I know," I answered, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "And I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes lifted to mine, and I could see the shift, a question turning into a decision. The kind that doesn't come from impulse, but from finally allowing yourself to want something again. After breakfast, we stepped outside together. The air was fresh, the ground glimmering with leftover raindrops. Sunlight pushed through scattered clouds, casting gentle warmth over the neighborhood. We stood on her front walkway, lingering because goodbye, even a short one, suddenly felt like too much distance. She wrapped one arm around herself, shy in a way I hadn't seen from her before. "So what happens now?" she asked, smiling nervously. I took a small step closer. "We keep going," I said, "one day at a time, together." There was a quiet wonder in the way she looked at me, like she was trying to learn what hope felt like again. She let my hand fall to my side only so she could move closer, her palms resting lightly against my chest. My breath caught not because of surprise, but because of how right it felt. I placed my hands gently on her waist, careful as if holding something precious. She rose slightly onto her toes, not for a kiss, not yet, but to rest her forehead against mine. Her eyes closed, and her voice came out in a whisper I felt more than heard. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I never wanted to," I replied. She opened her eyes again, and for the first time, there was no hesitation, only choice. She laced her fingers through mine and started walking, leading us toward the quiet stretch of sidewalk the two of us had passed 100 times as strangers. Now, we walked it with a different kind of closeness, hands held with confidence, steps synced without effort. Neighbors looked on. Cars passed by. Life continued as if nothing was unusual. But everything had changed. I glanced at her. Sunlight caught in her hair, a new lightness in her smile, and realized something that made my heart beat harder, steadier. This wasn't a crush. This wasn't a moment. This was the start of something real. As we reached the corner, she leaned in and placed a tender kiss on my cheek. A promise, not a tease. Her voice warm and sure. "I'm glad you're my neighbor." I squeezed her hand, smiling back. "I think we're a little more than that now." She laughed, bright, unguarded. And in that simple, beautiful sound, I found everything I didn't know I'd been looking for. Borrowing sugar? That was just the excuse. What we found was home. If you felt even a spark from their story, that quiet hope, that gentle tension, make sure to like this video so YouTube knows you want more. And if you believe love can find us in the most ordinary moments, subscribe and join me for the next slow burn romance that might just steal your heart.